Hi, today we're going to talk about George Washington. Don't forget to subscribe and put likes. Enjoy listening.
George Washington, the revered figure known as the father of his country, stands as an icon of American history and leadership. Born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, and passing away on December 14, 1799, at his Mount Vernon estate, Washington's life was marked by a series of pivotal events that shaped not only his destiny, but also the fate of a fledgling nation. The early years. George Washington's early years serve as a foundational backdrop to understanding the evolution of this remarkable figure who would go on to become the first president of the United States. Born on February 22, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, his life began in the heart of the American colonies during a period of burgeoning change and colonial growth. The Washington family, into which young George was born, was by no means one of the wealthiest or most influential in Virginia. His father, Augustine Washington, was a planter of modest means who had married Mary Ball Washington, herself from a respectable, if not particularly illustrious, Virginia family. The family's home was an estate known as Pope's Creek Estate, situated on the banks of the Potomac River, which, in retrospect, seems a fitting location for the birth of a child who would later have such a profound impact on the course of American history. Washington's early years were marked by the humble realities of colonial life. His family was part of the gentry class, which meant that while they were not impoverished, they were also far from being members of the colonial aristocracy. Inherently, this meant that young George's upbringing was steeped in the values of hard work, self-sufficiency, and a strong connection to the land. These values, deeply instilled during his formative years, would remain with him throughout his life and played a pivotal role in shaping his character. Education, however, was an area where young George's early years diverged from those of many of his contemporaries. His formal education was notably limited, primarily consisting of lessons from a series of tutors and a local schoolmaster. While he received some instruction in mathematics, surveying, and basic subjects, it is important to recognize that his education, by modern standards, was rudimentary at best. Nevertheless, he was a diligent student and exhibited a natural aptitude for mathematics and the practical sciences, skills that would prove invaluable in his later life. It is during his youth that Washington's fascination with the land and the opportunities it presented began to manifest. This fascination was nurtured by the rural environment in which he was raised, surrounded by fertile fields and dense woodlands. Early experiences as a land surveyor in the Virginia frontier, a role he assumed in his late teens, provided him with first-hand knowledge of the region's geography and the challenges of frontier life. This period of his life was marked by long journeys into the wilderness, often in challenging conditions, as he meticulously surveyed the land, laying out boundaries and resolving disputes. Perhaps one of the most profound influences on George Washington during his early years was the example set by his older half-brother, Lawrence Washington. Lawrence, who had served in the British Navy, returned to Virginia and took up residence at the family estate, subsequently renamed Mount Vernon. Lawrence's military service and gentlemanly demeanor left a lasting impression on young George, shaping his aspirations and worldview. The death of George's father, when he was just 11 years old, had a profound impact on his life. This event forced him to mature quickly and assume greater responsibilities on the family farm. While this period of his life was marked by hardships and financial difficulties, it also instilled in him a strong work ethic and a sense of duty to his family. In the bustling colonial society of Virginia, George Washington's early years were shaped by the complexities of race and slavery. The Washington family, like many others in the region, owned enslaved individuals who played a crucial role in the operation of their estates. This early exposure to the institution of slavery would, in time, lead Washington to grapple with the moral and social implications of slavery as he grew older and became more deeply involved in the politics of the fledgling nation. Military beginnings. The inception of George Washington's military career, marked by his appointment as a major in the Virginia militia at the age of 20, heralded the start of a trajectory that would ultimately shape the course of American history. This pivotal period, the prelude to the broader canvas of his military leadership during the American Revolution, was marked by Washington's rapid ascent through the ranks and his initiation into the complex world of colonial warfare. The year was 1753 when Washington received his first glimpse of the military. Tensions were escalating along the western frontier of the American colonies, where British and French forces were vying for control of the vast and lucrative Ohio River Valley. The stage was set for a conflict that would later become known as the French and Indian War. The Virginia colony, eager to protect its interests in the region, dispatched the young and relatively inexperienced George Washington as an envoy to deliver a message to the French authorities in the Ohio Valley, demanding their withdrawal from the area. Washington's mission, though ultimately unsuccessful in deterring the French, was a formative experience. His perilous journey through the wilderness, fraught with danger and encounters with Native American tribes, gave him first-hand knowledge of the rugged terrain and the complexities of frontier diplomacy. This expedition served as an early indication of his resilience, resourcefulness, and commitment to duty, qualities that would serve him well in the years to come. In 1754, the tensions between the British and the French in the Ohio Valley escalated into open hostilities, marking the official outbreak of the French and Indian War. George Washington, now a major in the Virginia militia, found himself at the forefront of this conflict. In a skirmish at Jumonville Glen, Washington's forces clashed with a French detachment, resulting in the death of the French commander, Joseph Coulon de Jumonville. This incident, sometimes called the Jumonville Affair, became an early spark in the broader conflict. As hostilities intensified, Washington's military acumen and leadership capabilities began to emerge. In July 1754, he faced a formidable challenge at Fort Necessity, where he and his forces were besieged by a larger French and Native American coalition. Despite eventually surrendering due to dwindling supplies and unfavorable conditions, Washington displayed a degree of composure and tactical understanding that belied his age and limited experience. The years that followed saw Washington continue to hone his military skills and leadership abilities. He served as a volunteer aide to British General Edward Braddock during the ill-fated Braddock Expedition in 1755, which ended in a disastrous defeat and Braddock's death. Through these experiences, Washington gained insight into the intricacies of European-style warfare and the challenges posed by Native American tactics. By 1758, Washington had risen to the rank of colonel and played a key role in the successful British campaign to capture Fort Duquesne, a pivotal moment in the French and Indian War. His tenure as a military leader during this conflict exposed him to the complexities of coordinating colonial militias with British regulars, a challenge that would prove invaluable during the American Revolution. While the French and Indian War officially concluded with the Treaty of Paris in 1763, George Washington's military education and early experiences had laid the groundwork for his future endeavors. He emerged from this conflict as a seasoned military officer with a deep understanding of the challenges of warfare in the American wilderness, the intricacies of diplomacy with Native American nations, and the complexities of leadership in a colonial context. The American Revolution. The American Revolution, one of the most pivotal events in world history, was a complex and multifaceted struggle for independence that unfolded over the course of several years. At its heart stood George Washington, a man whose unwavering commitment to the revolutionary cause and exceptional leadership abilities would come to symbolize the spirit of the American colonies in their quest for freedom. By the mid-1770s, tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain had reached a breaking point. Resentment over taxation without representation, infringements on colonial rights, and a growing desire for self-determination had ignited a fervor for independence among the colonists. Amidst this turbulent backdrop, George Washington emerged as a pivotal figure. Washington's reputation as a seasoned military officer, honed during his service in the French and Indian War, positioned him as a natural choice to lead the colonial forces. His leadership qualities, which included an unflinching resolve, a calm and composed demeanor under pressure, and a deep sense of duty, endeared him to his contemporaries. It was these qualities that led to his appointment as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army on June 15, 1775, by the Second Continental Congress. The responsibility of leading a fledgling army against the formidable might of the British Empire weighed heavily on Washington's shoulders. At the outset of the conflict, the American forces were ill-equipped, poorly trained, and lacking in discipline. It was, in many ways, a David and Goliath scenario, with the ragtag colonial army facing the world's most powerful military. The first major engagement of the Revolution occurred at the Battle of Bunker Hill in June 1775, shortly after Washington assumed command. Though technically a British victory, it was a Pyrrhic one, as the battle demonstrated the colonists' willingness to stand and fight against overwhelming odds. Washington recognized the need for discipline and training, and he began the arduous task of transforming the Continental Army into a professional fighting force. Over the next several years, the American Revolution unfolded as a series of campaigns, battles, and strategic maneuvering. Washington's leadership was tested repeatedly, and he faced numerous challenges along the way. Battles such as Trenton and Princeton in late 1776 and early 1777 showcased his tactical acumen and ability to rally his troops in the face of adversity. One of the turning points in the war came in 1777 during the Saratoga campaign. While Washington was not directly involved in these battles, the American victory at Saratoga, which led to the surrender of British General John Burgoyne, had far-reaching consequences. It helped secure critical French support for the American cause, turning a domestic colonial dispute into a global conflict. However, Washington's leadership was perhaps most profoundly tested during the harsh winter of 1777 to 1778 at Valley Forge. The Continental Army, suffering from a lack of supplies, malnutrition, and disease, faced a dire situation. Yet it was during these trying months that Washington's resilience and leadership shone. He implemented discipline, training, and logistical improvements that transformed the Army's capabilities. By the late 1770s, the war had shifted to the southern colonies, and Washington's strategic prowess came into play once again. While he personally traveled south to coordinate with French forces and attempt to recapture Charleston, South Carolina, his leadership remained a unifying force for the American cause. The climax of the American Revolution arrived in 1781 with the Siege of Yorktown. Under Washington's command, American and French forces laid siege to the British stronghold. The successful campaign resulted in the surrender of British General Cornwallis and effectively marked the end of the Revolutionary War. The Treaty of Paris in 1783 officially recognized American independence, thanks in no small part to Washington's steadfast leadership. Throughout the 8 years of conflict, George Washington's leadership had been instrumental in securing American independence. His ability to inspire his troops, his strategic acumen, and his unwavering commitment to the cause made him the linchpin of the American war effort. Yet, even as victory was achieved, Washington's commitment to the principles of liberty and self-governance did not waver. The Constitutional Convention. The period immediately following the American Revolution was marked by a profound sense of uncertainty and a pressing need to establish a stable and effective system of government. George Washington, having played a pivotal role in securing American independence through his military leadership, would once again step forward to guide the nation in a new capacity. In 1787, he presided over the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, an event that would shape the course of American governance and become a cornerstone of the nation's political identity. By the mid-1780s, it had become apparent that the Articles of Confederation, the initial framework of government established during the Revolutionary War, were woefully inadequate. The central government was weak, with no power to tax, raise an army, or regulate trade. States operated with a high degree of autonomy, often to the detriment of national unity. Economic instability, interstate disputes, and a lack of coordination in foreign affairs threatened the fragile American experiment. The Annapolis Convention of 1786, initially convened to address commercial issues, had highlighted the need for a broader constitutional overhaul. This gathering of delegates from a handful of states called for a more comprehensive meeting to revise the Articles of Confederation. As a result, the Constitutional Convention of 1787 was convened in Philadelphia, with George Washington selected as its presiding officer. Washington's presence at the Constitutional Convention was not merely symbolic, it was a testament to his enduring commitment to the American cause. His stature as a military hero and his unimpeachable character lent a degree of gravitas and legitimacy to the proceedings. Moreover, his advocacy for a stronger, more centralized government made him an advocate for reform from the outset. The Constitutional Convention brought together a diverse array of delegates representing different states, regions, and political philosophies. Among them were prominent figures such as James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin, and Gouverneur Morris. These individuals, often referred to as the Founding Fathers, were tasked with the formidable challenge of crafting a new constitution that would strike a delicate balance between centralized authority and individual liberty. Washington's role as the convention's president was largely ceremonial, involving the maintenance of decorum and order during debates. However, his presence and leadership were felt in less visible ways. His commitment to compromise and his ability to build consensus were instrumental in forging the compromises that underpinned the Constitution. He set a tone of civility and respect that helped create an environment conducive to reasoned debate and negotiation. One of the most contentious issues addressed at the Constitutional Convention was the structure of the federal government. Delegates grappled with questions of representation and power. The Virginia Plan, put forward by James Madison and Edmund Randolph, proposed a strong central government with a bicameral legislature, representation based on population, and the ability to veto state laws. The smaller states, however, feared that this plan would give too much power to the larger states. Washington's presence and influence were instrumental in resolving this impasse. While he did not participate directly in the debates, his support for compromise was evident. The Connecticut Compromise, also known as the Great Compromise, proposed a bicameral legislature with representation in the House of Representatives based on population and equal representation in the Senate. This compromise satisfied both large and small states and provided a critical breakthrough. Another contentious issue was the question of slavery. The institution of slavery divided the country along regional lines, with southern states adamant about protecting their economic interests. The 3/5 Compromise, which counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person for representation purposes, was reached, acknowledging the existence of slavery while attempting to address its impact on representation. The final document that emerged from the Constitutional Convention, the United States Constitution, represented a delicate balance of powers and interests. It established a federal system of government with a strong executive branch, a bicameral legislature, and an independent judiciary. It outlined the division of powers between the federal government and the states and included a Bill of Rights to protect individual liberties. George Washington's leadership during the Constitutional Convention was characterized by a commitment to the principles of Republican government, a recognition of the necessity of compromise, and a determination to see the process through to its conclusion. His steady hand and moral authority were critical in achieving consensus among the delegates. Upon the completion of the Constitution, Washington's support for its ratification was unwavering. He recognized the need for a stronger federal government to ensure the stability and prosperity of the new nation. His endorsement of the Constitution played a pivotal role in garnering support for its ratification by the states. The First Presidency. The inauguration of George Washington as the first President of the United States on April 30, 1789, marked the dawn of a new era in American history. His unanimous election by the Electoral College was not merely an affirmation of his leadership, but a testament to his role as a unifying figure during a critical juncture in the young nation's development. As he assumed the presidency, Washington faced a myriad of challenges that would test his leadership and shape the trajectory of the United States. At the outset of his presidency, the United States was in its infancy, grappling with the challenge of establishing a functional federal government. The Articles of Confederation had proven inadequate in providing the central authority necessary to govern effectively, and the need for a stronger, more cohesive union was apparent. Washington understood the gravity of this task and the importance of establishing the authority of the federal government while respecting the rights of the individual states. One of his first acts as president was the selection of his cabinet, a group of advisors who would play a crucial role in shaping the policies and direction of the administration. His choices reflected a desire for diverse perspectives and expertise. Thomas Jefferson was appointed as Secretary of State, Alexander Hamilton as Secretary of the Treasury, Henry Knox as Secretary of War, and Edmund Randolph as Attorney General. Together, they formed the nucleus of the executive branch, guiding the president in various policy matters. Among the most pressing challenges faced by the new administration was the daunting task of establishing a system of federal taxation and addressing the nation's considerable war debt. Alexander Hamilton, as Secretary of the Treasury, played a pivotal role in crafting a comprehensive financial plan. His proposals included the assumption of state debts by the federal government, the creation of a national bank, and the imposition of tariffs to generate revenue. Despite strong opposition, particularly from Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, these policies were ultimately implemented and laid the groundwork for the financial stability of the United States. Washington's leadership extended beyond domestic affairs to the realm of foreign policy, an area marked by the complex dynamics of international relations. The United States was a young nation seeking to establish its place on the world stage. Challenges included relations with European powers, notably Britain and France, who were themselves engaged in conflicts that had repercussions for American interests. The signing of the Jay Treaty with Great Britain in 1795 was a significant achievement of Washington's administration. The treaty, negotiated by Chief Justice John Jay, sought to address issues stemming from the Treaty of Paris of 1783 and mitigate tensions between the United States and Britain. While the treaty faced strong opposition from Jeffersonian Republicans, who believed it conceded too much to the British, Washington saw it as a means of preserving peace and securing American interests. Its ratification represented a triumph of diplomacy and an example of the executive branch's role in foreign affairs. Despite his many successes, Washington's presidency was not without its challenges. Internal divisions, particularly between the emerging Federalist and Democratic Republican factions, tested the nation's unity. The partisan divide was exemplified by the vehement criticisms levied against the administration, particularly in the press. Thomas Jefferson's opposition, channeled through newspapers like the National Gazette, created an atmosphere of political acrimony. It was against this backdrop that George Washington delivered his farewell address in 1796. In this seminal document of American political thought, he reflected on the principles that had guided his presidency and offered sage advice for the future. Washington stressed the importance of national unity, warning against the dangers of sectionalism and political factionalism. He also emphasized the necessity of avoiding entangling foreign alliances and maintaining a policy of neutrality in international conflicts. Washington's farewell address became a foundational text in American political discourse, setting a precedent for the peaceful transfer of power and offering enduring guidance on matters of foreign policy and national unity. His decision to step down after 2 terms, despite the potential for re-election, underscored his commitment to the Republican ideals of limited government and the rotation of power. The legacy. George Washington's retirement from public life in 1797 marked the culmination of a remarkable journey from a young Virginia planter to the first president of the United States. His decision to voluntarily relinquish power and return to private life was a pivotal moment in the history of the young republic, setting a precedent for the peaceful transfer of authority and cementing his legacy as a paramount figure in American history. By the time of his retirement, George Washington had served his nation diligently for over 2 decades. His contributions were manifold, encompassing his military leadership during the American Revolution, his role in the Constitutional Convention, and his 2 terms as president. His leadership had provided a steadying hand during a period of immense uncertainty and laid the foundation for the fledgling United States. One of the most enduring aspects of Washington's legacy was his commitment to Republican ideals and the principles of limited government. His decision to step down after 2 terms as president established an important precedent. This voluntary relinquishment of power was not merely an act of personal humility, but a conscious choice to avoid the dangers of dynastic rule and reinforce the principle that the government derived its authority from the consent of the governed. In doing so, Washington ensured that the United States would not become a monarchy or a dictatorship and set an example for future leaders. Washington's farewell address, delivered upon leaving the presidency, further underscored his commitment to these principles. In this landmark document, he warned against the dangers of factionalism, political polarization, and foreign entanglements. His call for national unity and neutrality in foreign affairs resonated with subsequent generations of Americans and established enduring principles of American foreign policy. The passing of George Washington on December 14, 1799, was met with an outpouring of grief and mourning that swept across the nation. Newspapers published eulogies and tributes, and churches held memorial services. Citizens from all walks of life, regardless of their political beliefs, joined in mourning the loss of their beloved leader. Washington's death marked the end of an era and was seen as a deeply personal loss for the entire nation. Washington's funeral, held at his Mount Vernon estate, was a solemn and dignified event. His remains were interred in a family tomb, and his funeral procession was attended by a multitude of mourners. The eulogy delivered by Henry "Lighthorse Harry" Lee captured the essence of Washington's legacy with the famous phrase, "First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen." In the wake of his death, tributes to George Washington multiplied. His image graced portraits, paintings, and engravings, becoming an iconic symbol of the new nation. Monuments, schools, towns, and even a state were named in his honor. His legacy extended beyond the borders of the United States, with many foreign leaders and observers recognizing his pivotal role in the success of the American Revolution and the establishment of a democratic republic. Washington's legacy also left an indelible mark on the office of the presidency. His precedent of serving 2 terms was followed by all subsequent presidents until Franklin D. Roosevelt, whose 4-term presidency led to the ratification of the 22nd Amendment limiting presidents to 2 terms. The reverence for Washington as the father of his country established a standard of leadership and character that has influenced the expectations placed on presidents throughout American history. Beyond his political legacy, George Washington's personal character and values have continued to inspire generations of Americans. His commitment to integrity, honor, and duty set a high standard for public servants. His willingness to place the interests of the nation above his personal ambitions and his dedication to the principles of liberty and self-governance remain guiding principles in the American political and moral landscape. Conclusion. The life and legacy of George Washington stand as a testament to the enduring power of leadership, vision, and character in shaping a nation. From his humble beginnings as the eldest son of a Virginia planter to his pivotal role as the first president of the United States, Washington's journey exemplifies the quintessential American story of self-improvement, determination, and unwavering devotion to the cause of liberty and self-governance. Washington's leadership during the American Revolution was a defining moment in the nation's history. His military prowess, displayed in battles such as Trenton, Princeton, and Yorktown, was instrumental in securing American independence. Yet, it was his ability to inspire and unite a diverse group of individuals under a common cause that truly set him apart. His unwavering commitment to the principles of republicanism, his belief in the rule of law, and his dedication to the welfare of the nation over personal gain established a standard of leadership that has influenced generations of Americans. The Constitutional Convention of 1787 further exemplified Washington's leadership. His presence as the presiding officer lent a sense of legitimacy and stability to the proceedings. His commitment to compromise and his recognition of the need for a stronger federal government were instrumental in the crafting of the United States Constitution, a document that has endured for over 2 centuries as the bedrock of American governance. Washington's presidency, marked by his 2 terms in office and his principled leadership, provided a steady hand during a turbulent era. His decisions, such as the ratification of the Jay Treaty and the establishment of a comprehensive financial system, laid the groundwork for the economic stability and foreign policy principles that would guide the nation for generations. His voluntary relinquishment of power after 2 terms set a precedent for the peaceful transfer of authority, reinforcing the principles of a democratic republic. The passing of George Washington in 1799 marked the end of an era and prompted a national outpouring of grief and admiration. His death solidified his place in the pantheon of American heroes, and his legacy became an enduring symbol of American identity. His image graced countless portraits, monuments, and currency, and his name was bestowed upon towns, counties, and states. His farewell address, a document of enduring wisdom, continues to resonate with its warnings against factionalism and foreign entanglements. Beyond his political and military accomplishments, George Washington's personal character and values continue to inspire. His integrity, honor, and sense of duty set a high standard for public servants, and his dedication to the principles of liberty and self-governance remain guiding principles in the American political and moral landscape. In conclusion, George Washington's life and legacy remain a source of inspiration and pride for the United States. His unwavering commitment to the ideals of liberty, self-governance, and the welfare of the nation, combined with his leadership in times of crisis, have left an indelible mark on American history. Washington's journey from a young Virginian planter to the first president of the United States serves as a reminder of the enduring power of character and leadership in shaping a nation. His legacy continues to be a beacon of hope and inspiration for generations to come, reminding us of the enduring principles upon which the United States was founded and the potential for greatness that resides within the American spirit. More information and facts. The unanimous president. George Washington's 2 unanimous elections. In the annals of American history, few figures loom as large as George Washington, the commander-in-chief of the Continental Army during the American Revolution and the nation's inaugural president. His legacy as a military leader, statesman, and founding father is deeply ingrained in the collective memory of the United States. One of the most remarkable and unprecedented aspects of Washington's political career was his unanimous election to the presidency, a testament to the immense respect and trust that the American people had in his leadership. The first presidential election in American history took place in 1789. The nation was in its infancy, and the task of selecting the first president was one of paramount importance. The framers of the United States Constitution had created an innovative system of government, and the success of this experiment in Republican self-governance depended on the selection of a capable and virtuous leader. George Washington was a unanimous choice for this historic role. When the Electoral College convened to cast their votes, there was no opposition to his candidacy. Washington received all 69 electoral votes available, making him the unanimous selection for the presidency. This extraordinary consensus spoke volumes about the high regard in which he was held by the nation's political leaders and the general populace. Several factors contributed to Washington's unanimous election in 1789. First and foremost was his impeccable reputation. Throughout the Revolutionary War, he had been a steadfast and unifying figure, commanding the respect and admiration of his fellow patriots. His leadership had been instrumental in securing American independence, and he had exhibited qualities of integrity, honor, and selflessness that resonated deeply with the American people. Washington's decision to retire from military service after the war further solidified his reputation as a statesman committed to the principles of civilian control over the military. This voluntary relinquishment of power was a profound act of humility and demonstrated his commitment to the principles of republicanism and the rule of law. Another crucial factor in Washington's unanimous election was his position on the Constitution. As one of the delegates to the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in 1787, he had lent his prestige to the deliberations. His support for the Constitution during the ratification process, articulated in his letters and speeches, carried significant weight. Americans saw in Washington a leader who was not only instrumental in the creation of the Constitution, but also someone who would faithfully execute its provisions as president. Additionally, Washington's stance on the presidency itself reassured many who feared the potential for a monarchical executive. He envisioned the presidency as a position of public service, characterized by republican virtue rather than personal ambition. His willingness to accept the office with a sense of duty rather than personal ambition reassured many Americans. Washington's unanimous election to the presidency was a momentous event in American history. It symbolized the unity and hope of a young nation, recently emerged from the crucible of revolution and grappling with the challenges of nationhood. His leadership and character represented a beacon of stability and a source of inspiration in an era of uncertainty. Washington's first term as president was marked by significant challenges, including the establishment of the federal government, the crafting of the Bill of Rights, and the development of a financial system. His leadership was tested on multiple fronts, and he navigated these early challenges with a deft touch and a commitment to the principles of Republican governance. As Washington's first term neared its conclusion, there was little doubt that he would seek a second term. His administration had laid the groundwork for the new government, but there were still pressing issues to address. His unanimous election in 1789 had set a precedent, and it was widely expected that he would serve a second term to ensure the stability of the fledgling republic. In 1792, the second presidential election took place, and once again, George Washington was unanimously elected. He received all 132 electoral votes cast, a remarkable reaffirmation of his leadership and the nation's confidence in his abilities. This unanimous endorsement for a second term further underscored his importance to the young nation. The unanimous elections of George Washington set a precedent for the peaceful transfer of power that would become a hallmark of American democracy. His decision to step down after 2 terms, despite the potential for re-election, demonstrated his commitment to the principles of a democratic republic. Mount Vernon, George Washington's storied estate. Mount Vernon, nestled along the banks of the Potomac River in Northern Virginia, stands as an enduring testament to the life and legacy of George Washington, the first president of the United States. This historic estate, once the home of Washington and his family, not only serves as a window into the past, but also reflects the architectural and agricultural prowess of this remarkable founding father. A place of retreat and family, George Washington acquired Mount Vernon in 1754, initially as a 2,000-acre property, and it would become a central part of his life. Originally a 1.5-story farmhouse, Washington embarked on a series of renovations and expansions to transform it into an elegant and functional home. The mansion, known as the Mansion House, underwent several renovations and enlargements during Washington's ownership. The final version, completed in the 1780s, featured a 2-story central block flanked by 1-story wings. The iconic cupola atop the mansion served both practical and aesthetic purposes, providing light and ventilation while adding to the visual grandeur. Architectural evolution. Washington's architectural interests and ambitions were evident in the ongoing expansion and refinement of Mount Vernon. The Palladian style, popular in the 18th century, influenced many of his design choices. The estate's architecture reflected Washington's taste for symmetry, proportion, and classical elements. His attention to detail extended to the interior of the mansion, where he employed skilled craftsmen to create finely crafted woodwork, moldings, and decorative features. Gardens and landscapes. The estate's gardens and landscapes were another manifestation of Washington's love for horticulture and design. The formal gardens around the mansion featured terraces, walks, and a variety of trees and shrubs. A meticulously designed pleasure garden provided a serene and visually appealing setting. Washington's interest in botany led to the cultivation of a wide range of plants, including exotic species collected from around the world. The gardens served both practical and aesthetic purposes, providing a bountiful harvest of fruits and vegetables, while enhancing the estate's beauty. Farming and innovation. Agriculture was at the heart of Mount Vernon's operations. Washington was a forward-thinking farmer who embraced innovative agricultural practices of the time. He experimented with crop rotation, soil conservation, and diversification of crops. His efforts not only ensured the self-sufficiency of the estate, but also made Mount Vernon a model of efficient and sustainable farming. The estate's farms produced a variety of crops, including wheat, corn, tobacco, and flax. Whiskey distillery. Washington's entrepreneurial spirit extended to the realm of industry. At Mount Vernon, he established one of the nation's largest whiskey distilleries of the late 18th century. Located on the estate, the distillery was a commercial venture that produced a significant quantity of whiskey. Washington's whiskey, known for its quality, was in demand both locally and beyond. This venture highlighted his interest in industry and innovation. The slave quarters. It is important to note that Mount Vernon's success and grandeur were made possible, in large part, through the labor of enslaved individuals. Washington's ownership of enslaved individuals has been a subject of historical scrutiny. The estate includes reconstructions of slave quarters, providing insights into the lives of the enslaved community that lived and worked at Mount Vernon. Preservation and legacy. Following George Washington's death in 1799, Mount Vernon faced periods of neglect and disrepair. However, dedicated efforts to preserve and restore the estate began in the 19th century. The Mount Vernon Ladies Association, formed in 1853, played a pivotal role in acquiring and preserving the property. Today, Mount Vernon stands as one of the most visited historic sites in the United States, a testament to the enduring fascination with George Washington's life and contributions. The Cherry Tree Myth. George Washington's enduring legend. In the pantheon of American folklore, few stories are as enduring and widely recognized as the tale of young George Washington and the cherry tree. This iconic narrative, often cited as a paragon of honesty and integrity, has been passed down through generations as an emblematic moment in the life of the nation's first president. While the story is celebrated for its moral lesson, it is important to note that it is not a factual account, but rather a legend that emerged in the early 19th century. The origins of the cherry tree story can be traced back to a biographer named Parson Mason Locke Weems, who published a biography of George Washington titled The Life of Washington in 1800. Weems, a minister and bookseller, sought to provide a more intimate and human portrait of the revered founding father. In doing so, he included a now famous anecdote that showcased Washington's character as a young boy. According to Weems's account, young George Washington received a hatchet as a gift from his father. Eager to try out his new tool, he came across a young cherry tree in the family garden. In a moment of youthful curiosity, he decided to test the hatchet's capabilities by chopping down the tree. When his father discovered the felled cherry tree and questioned the culprits, young George, unable to tell a lie, confessed, proclaiming, "I cannot tell a lie. I did it with my little hatchet." In response, his father embraced him, commending him for his honesty while forgiving the act of tree felling. The story was an immediate hit, and it became a prominent part of Weems's biography. In subsequent editions, the cherry tree tale was embellished and expanded upon, solidifying its place in the popular imagination. The story was recounted in moralistic terms, emphasizing the virtue of truthfulness and the moral character of George Washington even in his youth. Weems's biography of Washington enjoyed considerable success and was widely read in the early 19th century. It helped shape the public's perception of Washington as a figure of moral rectitude and contributed to the development of his legend as the father of his country. However, it is important to emphasize that the cherry tree story is not based on historical evidence. There is no contemporary documentation or accounts from George Washington's childhood that support the existence of such an incident. Weems himself never claimed to have found the story in primary sources, but instead asserted that it was passed down through oral tradition. The enduring popularity of the cherry tree story speaks to its resonance with American ideals of honesty, integrity, and the moral character of leaders. It has been cited and referenced in countless works of literature, art, and popular culture, further embedding it in the national consciousness. Slave ownership and evolving views. George Washington's complex relationship with slavery. George Washington, the celebrated founding father and first president of the United States, is a central figure in American history. However, his legacy is marked by a complex and morally troubling aspect of his life: his ownership of enslaved individuals. Washington's journey from a young plantation owner to a statesman who grappled with the institution of slavery reflects the moral and political complexities of his era. Early years and the institution of slavery. Washington's early exposure to slavery was a product of his time and his upbringing in Virginia, a colony heavily reliant on slave labor. His family, like many others in the region, held enslaved individuals to work on their farms and estates. From a young age, Washington was immersed in a society where slavery was an accepted and entrenched institution. Slavery at Mount Vernon. When George Washington inherited Mount Vernon, he also inherited enslaved individuals who worked the estate's extensive fields and managed its operations. Under his ownership, Mount Vernon's enslaved population grew, reflecting the expansion of the estate's agricultural activities. Enslaved individuals played a central role in the economic success of Mount Vernon. Views on slavery. Washington's views on slavery evolved over time, influenced by a variety of factors. While he did not publicly express strong abolitionist sentiments, there is evidence to suggest that he began to question the institution of slavery and its moral implications. His exposure to Enlightenment ideals, conversations with abolitionists, and personal experiences may have contributed to this evolution. The American Revolution and slavery. During the American Revolution, Washington's views on slavery were further influenced by the ideals of liberty and equality that underpinned the revolutionary cause. He recognized the contradiction between fighting for the freedom of the American colonies while simultaneously holding enslaved individuals in bondage. Some of his contemporaries, including some enslaved individuals who served in the Continental Army, may have challenged his perspective. Provisions in his will. One of the most significant indicators of Washington's evolving views on slavery was the provision in his will regarding the disposition of enslaved individuals. In his will, written in 1799, he stipulated that upon the death of his wife, Martha, all of his enslaved individuals were to be set free. This provision was notable not only for its rarity among slave-owning elites, but also for the potential impact it could have on the lives of those he enslaved. Gradual emancipation. While George Washington's will contained a commitment to the eventual emancipation of his enslaved individuals, it did not result in immediate freedom for them. After Washington's death in December 1799, Martha Washington chose not to execute the provision, which would have meant the immediate liberation of the enslaved population at Mount Vernon. Instead, she opted to provide for their gradual emancipation, ensuring their continued labor for several years before freedom. Legacy and historical interpretation. George Washington's complex relationship with slavery has been a subject of ongoing historical debate and interpretation. While his evolving views on slavery are evident in his actions, particularly the provisions in his will, they must be considered in the context of the era in which he lived. Washington's legacy is a reminder that individuals, even those of great historical significance, are products of their time and circumstances. Teeth troubles. The dental health of George Washington. The image of George Washington as a stern and dignified figure, often portrayed with a stolid expression, is indelibly etched in the American consciousness. One enduring aspect of his image is the myth that he had wooden teeth. However, the reality of George Washington's dental health is far more complex, painful, and revealing of the medical practices of his time. Early dental issues. George Washington's dental troubles began at an early age. By the time he reached adulthood, he was already experiencing dental problems. The exact causes of his dental issues are not definitively known, but factors such as hereditary predisposition, diet, and the dental hygiene practices of the 18th century likely played a role. Tooth loss. Over the course of his life, George Washington lost a significant number of his teeth. The loss of teeth was a gradual process, and as his dental problems worsened, it had a profound impact on his health and quality of life. His dental issues were not merely a matter of discomfort, but were a constant source of pain and inconvenience. Misconceptions and the myth of wooden teeth. The myth that George Washington had wooden teeth is a long-standing and persistent one. In reality, he never had wooden teeth. The myth likely arose from the discolored appearance of some of his dentures, which were constructed from various materials, including human teeth, animal teeth, and even lead. Contrary to popular belief, wooden dentures were not a common or practical dental prosthetic in the 18th century. Dental care practices of the 18th century. The dental care practices of George Washington's time were quite different from modern dentistry. Tooth extraction was a common treatment for dental issues, and toothpaste, as we know it today, did not exist. Dental hygiene was rudimentary, and many people suffered from dental problems. Washington's personal dental regimen included the use of toothbrushes with animal hair bristles and a variety of tooth powders, dentures, and dental treatments. To address the loss of his natural teeth and the ongoing deterioration of his dental health, George Washington turned to dentures. He had several sets of dentures made during his lifetime, and they were constructed using a range of materials. Some contained human teeth, which were obtained from various sources, including slaves. Others used animal teeth, ivory, and even lead. Impact on health and appearance. Washington's dental issues had a profound impact on his health and appearance. The loss of teeth affected his ability to eat comfortably and may have contributed to nutritional deficiencies. His appearance was also affected, as the loss of teeth and the use of dentures altered the structure of his face and the way he spoke. Ongoing dental suffering. Despite the efforts to address his dental problems with dentures, George Washington continued to experience dental pain and discomfort throughout his life. Contemporary accounts described his struggles with ill-fitting dentures, mouth sores, and difficulty eating. Legacy and historical perspective. George Washington's dental problems are a reminder of the medical challenges faced by individuals in the 18th century. His experience with dental issues, while unique in its historical prominence, was not uncommon for the time. It offers a window into the state of medical and dental care during the era of the American Revolution. Legacy of neutrality. George Washington's influence on American foreign policy. George Washington's presidency, marked by a steady hand and principled leadership, left an indelible mark on the emerging United States. One of the most enduring aspects of his legacy in the realm of foreign policy was his commitment to neutrality during the tumultuous years of the French Revolutionary Wars. Washington's policy of neutrality set a precedent that would significantly shape American foreign relations for much of its early history. The context of the French Revolutionary Wars. In the late 18th century, Europe was engulfed in the chaos of the French Revolution, which began in 1789. This period was marked by radical political changes, including the rise of the French Republic and the eventual emergence of Napoleon Bonaparte. European powers were drawn into a complex web of alliances and conflicts, making it a turbulent and dangerous time in international affairs. The proclamation of neutrality. 1793. Against this backdrop, George Washington, who had been re-elected as president in 1793, faced the challenging task of determining the United States' stance toward the warring European powers. On April 22, 1793, he issued the Proclamation of Neutrality. This historic document declared that the United States would remain neutral in the conflict between France and Great Britain, despite the existence of treaties with both nations. Avoiding entangling alliances, Washington's decision to declare neutrality was grounded in a deep commitment to the principle of avoiding entangling alliances. He believed that the young nation should steer clear of foreign conflicts and alliances that could compromise its independence and sovereignty. This principle of non-intervention in European affairs would come to be known as the doctrine of no entangling alliances. Maintaining neutrality, Washington's administration worked diligently to maintain the policy of neutrality. This included measures to prevent American citizens from participating in the conflict, such as the Neutrality Act of 1794, which prohibited U.S. citizens from serving on foreign ships of war. Additionally, Washington sought to negotiate with both France and Britain to protect American interests, including freedom of trade. Jay Treaty and Pinckney's Treaty. Two significant treaties negotiated during Washington's presidency contributed to the maintenance of peace and neutrality. The Jay Treaty, 1795, with Great Britain averted a potential conflict and resolved several issues, including the British occupation of forts in the Northwest Territory. Similarly, Pinckney's Treaty, 1795, with Spain secured navigation rights on the Mississippi River and access to New Orleans for American trade. Challenges and opposition. Washington's policy of neutrality faced challenges and opposition, particularly from those who favored closer ties with France. The divisive nature of the issue contributed to the emergence of political factions, with Thomas Jefferson and James Madison leading the pro-French Democratic Republican Party. This division would shape early American politics. Enduring legacy. The policy of neutrality pursued by George Washington during the French Revolutionary Wars had a lasting impact on American foreign policy. It set a precedent for non-intervention in European conflicts that would be followed by subsequent presidents, including Thomas Jefferson during the Napoleonic Wars and James Monroe with the Monroe Doctrine. The United States' tradition of neutrality contributed to its identity as a non-colonial, non-imperial power in world affairs. The doctrine of no entangling alliances. The principle of avoiding entangling alliances, exemplified by Washington's neutrality policy, became a foundational element of American foreign policy. It has been invoked and debated throughout American history, influencing decisions related to alliances, military interventions, and international engagement. Monuments and memorials. George Washington's enduring legacy. George Washington, the father of his country, occupies a unique and revered place in the annals of American history. His leadership during the Revolutionary War and his presidency set the stage for the birth of the United States as a nation. His legacy is not only enshrined in the pages of history, but also prominently displayed in the physical landscape of the United States through monuments and memorials that pay tribute to his enduring influence. The Washington Monument. Among the most iconic and recognizable monuments dedicated to George Washington is the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., completed in 1884. It stands as a towering symbol of the nation's gratitude and admiration for its first president. Rising to a height of 555 feet, 169 meters, the monument is a stunning obelisk constructed from white marble, granite, and bluestone gneiss. Its sheer size and grandeur make it an imposing presence on the National Mall, where it serves as a focal point for visitors and a backdrop for countless national events. Symbolism and design. The Washington Monument's design is deeply symbolic. Its obelisk shape draws inspiration from ancient Egyptian monuments, evoking a sense of timelessness and immortality. Inside the monument, visitors can find a memorial stone donated by the people of the United States in honor of Washington. Inscribed with the Latin phrase, Laus Deo, praise be to God, It underscores the profound religious and spiritual dimensions of Washington's character. Construction challenges. The construction of the Washington Monument was not without challenges. Funding issues, the outbreak of the Civil War, and design modifications contributed to a lengthy construction period. The monument's construction was temporarily halted in the 1850s and resumed in 1876 after the end of the Civil War. It stands as a testament to the dedication and determination of those who sought to honor Washington's memory. A national symbol. The Washington Monument is not merely a tribute to George Washington. It has also become a symbol of American democracy and the enduring principles upon which the nation was founded. Its prominent location on the National Mall, flanked by the U.S. Capitol and the Lincoln Memorial, underscores its significance as a cornerstone of American identity. Washington's image on currency. Beyond the physical monument, George Washington's image is embedded in the daily lives of Americans through currency. His profile graces the front of the U.S. $1 bill, a denomination that is one of the most widely used in daily transactions. Additionally, his likeness is featured on the quarter, a testament to his status as a figure of national importance. Legacy of leadership. The presence of George Washington in the public consciousness, through monuments and currency, serves as a constant reminder of his role in shaping the nation. His leadership during the Revolutionary War, his presidency, and his principled character are celebrated and revered as foundational elements of American history and identity. Continuing reverence. The enduring reverence for George Washington is a testament to the enduring power of his legacy. His leadership qualities, including his commitment to unity, his dedication to the principles of the American Revolution, and his willingness to relinquish power after 2 terms as president, continue to inspire and resonate with Americans.